This exhibit is entitled The Bell Jar Revisited. It's part of my Archives capstone project. I created it this summer and was helped a lot by Kukil. It focuses on the creative process that Sylvia Plath had while writing the bell jar. Many people believe that Sylvia Plath was just very depressed and kind of morose, and I really wish that that weren't the case. It's hard to combat those public views of her, and so I'm hoping that this exhibit shows how creative she was and how excited she was about writing her novel.
I was actually surprised when I did orientation this year because a lot of students are reading The Bell Jar in high school. And I talked to students from Austin, Texas, and from China, and they're all reading the novel in high school. So I think it's sort of a coming-of-age novel that students really relate to at that age. Esther Greenwood is trying to figure out who she is, what her goals are, that sort of thing. And so I do think that students relate to it. I also find Plath an absolutely fearless writer. She'll talk about the most painful experiences, such as electroshock therapy, suicide attempts, whatever sort of horrible thing you can imagine, she will talk about it in the novel. And I think students relate to that, to someone who will go into dark country. But Plath is also very light and very funny, and so I think you need the combination of both. Otherwise it would be a real buzzkill, you know, nobody would read it.
The highlight of this case is a draft from the bell jar. It talks about Sylvia Plath being missing after her first suicide attempt. I thought it was interesting when I researched this because it talks about there being many different articles and in the paper, as well as some clippings. And not only do we have those clippings here in the Mortimer River Book Room, but we also have some photographs, some of which match the description that she had and wrote about in the bell jar draft. I thought that was very important because it shows just how real her life is and the inspiration of the book. Another inspiring piece that I wanted to include in the show is an article from a Cosmopolitan magazine. This was one of the first to talk about how psychiatry and beauty are related. Because Sylvia Plath had so many mental health issues, she wanted to really focus on this in her first book. She writes to her friend that this was one of the most important things and that she couldn't wait to write a book about her experiences.
When Plath received the Saxton grant, she was supposed to submit 4 quarterly reports, and we have 2 of them on display here. It's very unusual to have an author actually tell us what she was trying to accomplish in her book. There's a chapter that she talks about here in her May 1st progress report, which she submitted in 1962, in which she talks about going to Dr. Gordon's private mental hospital where she received electroshock therapy for the first time. She says in the final paragraph on this page that the ECT treatment was not programmed at the right voltage, so she was awake during the process and she felt like she was being electrocuted. But she resolves at this point in the novel to kill herself rather than go through ECT treatment again. And if you do look at the one-page outline, she actually sort of has that in mind before she writes the novel. She writes here, private mental hospital, windows barred, vowed to kill self. So that's the progression she uses in the novel. Plath wrote the book in about 5 months after the birth of Frida, her daughter, Frida Hughes, when she and Ted Hughes moved back to London. She was living in basically a 2-room apartment. So this is 1961. And W.S. Merwin gave her a studio to write in when he and his wife were away in France. So Plath went to this studio every morning to write the novel, and it probably took her about 5 months in 1961. In her journal, she wrote next to the question, why don't I write a novel? She wrote, I have The Bell Jar, August 22nd, 1961. So we actually know when she completed the novel. But because she won a Saxton grant, she had to delay the publication for a year.
I believe the message of the bell jar is that one can overcome really difficult times. The book focuses on mental illness and also focuses on how one can recover from such mental illnesses. And although they're both difficult subjects, they're really important. And I believe that that's part of the reason why the book has lasted so long and is still loved by the public.
I think the bell jar still speaks to teenagers as they form their personalities, they figure out their goals, they try different things. Also with the issue of mental illness, the novel deals with that pretty head-on, pretty directly. And I think it's helpful for students to know that if they're feeling depressed or something, they're not alone. So I do think students relate to the honesty that Plath relates in the novel more than anything else, and also the humor too, the darkness and the light in the novel.